Namaste. We are with Gautamji once again, and today we will be talking about a very important topic, which is the difference between the working mind and the thinking mind. So, Gautam, could you just give us a brief about this important concept, please?
Yes, Nick, this is something I would love to share with the audience because it will make their understanding very simple, you see. So, there are two aspects of the mind, the thinking mind and the working mind. The thinking mind is the mind which is always going into the dead past or an imaginary future. And most of us, we know our minds are doing that, you see. We are either always reflecting on happy memories in the past and getting lost in those memories and saying, oh, wish things were like that. Or we are always thinking of painful memories in the past. This happened to me, that happened to me, poor me, you see. So we are no longer in the present moment. And similarly, we are projecting into the future. Oh, I'm not happy where I am right now. I want, when everything is ideal, I'll be happy. That is an imaginary future.
Yes.
Or we project a fear from the past based on past experience into the future. This happened to me in the past, so I better be careful, otherwise it could happen to me again in the future. This is the thinking mind. It is always thinking of the past or the future. And we find that so much of our mind content is made up of this activity of the thinking mind. And what happens when this thinking mind is in the past or future, we are no longer in the present moment. As simple as that. You see? And life is lived now, in the present moment. So in that sense, look at the disrespect given to the present moment, which is the only thing that is sacred, because you and me are here right now. But when we go into this dead past and the imaginary future, we lose the moment. We lose the presence, we lose the joy of being here right now. So that is very clearly what the thinking mind does, you see. Now coming to the working mind. The working mind is the mind that is engaged in work. So let's take any example. You could be at your office, sitting on your desk, doing whatever work you are doing and focused on your work. So that is the working mind. The working mind is always in the present moment. It doesn't jump into the dead past or an imaginary future. The attention is brought to the moment. You see? So in that sense, a working mind is a meditative mind because it's not going all over the place. So this distinction is very important so that in our own day, we can see that are we mostly in the thinking mind mode or are we in the working mind mode? I hope it's quite clearly understood the difference between these two concepts.
Yes, Gautam, I was wondering maybe if you could give a simple example for both so, people can just see how this could be, applied in their own lives.
You see, like I said, it could be whatever work you are doing. It could be, let's say, my teacher would give the example of a surgeon conducting an operation, which actually makes it very clear, Now, when he is conducting the operation, he is in working mind mode. He is in the moment. He has to do the incision precisely. All his years of experience are brought to that moment of the working mind to do the operation in the best possible way. Now, this also includes all his past experience which he has with him.
Yes.
He will dip into that experience, that knowledge, but his mind is focused on the surgery. So that is a classic situation of the working mind mode. Now, supposing just before the surgery, a fellow colleague doctor comes and whispers in his ear, hey, do you know, you're operating on a very important politician. You better be very careful. Because if you're not, then your career as a surgeon is finished. Now, supposing the surgeon is operating and he is in the working mind mode, and suddenly this thought comes, the thought of an imaginary future. What if I do something, then my career will be in trouble? That is the thinking mind. So the thinking mind has now kicked in. He is in an imaginary future, and then the work which he was doing so efficiently and so smoothly is now destroyed because the mind has wandered into the future.
Gautam, I have a question around this. It reminds me a little bit of what Eckhart would say, and I'm going to go into the aspect of spiritual practice here and how important the role is of spiritual sadhana for every devotee. Because Gautam, Eckhart had given a very beautiful example. He said many people engage in dangerous activities, say sometimes like mountain climbing, extreme sports, or like driving a super bike at like super high speeds, because in those moments their mind is forced into concentrating on something, because literally it's do or die for them, and then they feel like really peaceful when they are engaging in that particular activity, but when they come out of it they're a complete mess.
Yes, absolutely.
I felt, this is a very important concept that Rameshji has brought out to us. Like, for example, its application would be great if someone is sitting at home and say they've lost their job. One practical example could be, hey, how can you get into seva? Maybe you can volunteer, maybe you can do some charity work rather than, sitting all day and worrying, or, what will happen about me and blah, blah, blah. So in that aspect, I feel it's a great concept for someone to replace, say, their 9 to 5, if they say have lost their job, with something constructive. Is that right, Gautam?
Yes. So coming back to this example of, let's say, racing car drivers or tightrope walkers or mountain climbers, what is happening is there's no room for the thinking mind to operate, because if it does, you're dead. You have to be in the present moment, which is the total working mind in operation.
But you see, Eckhart said this from a negative connotation, where he said that people who have unstable minds and are not grounded tend to engage in these dangerous activities because it's their only outlet of peace.
Yes, I'm coming to that point. This is precisely it. It takes them to do that extreme activity in order for the working mind to be engaged. Now the problem is, you can't be mountain climbing all the time. You can't be driving a racing car all the time to keep the working mind engaged. Why? It's not natural, you see. What is happening is, who am I without my working mind and my thinking mind? That question has not been asked. So we are incessantly engaged in activity. We cannot sit still. So the mistake that happens is this constant engagement of the mind. Now let's take something very simple. Forget mountain climbing and all. A girl had come to my talks and she confessed. She said, I can't sit still. So even when I have nothing to do, what am I doing? Re-looking at my WhatsApp messages, checking out everyone's DPs on WhatsApp. She said, I can't sit still. So I asked her, what will happen if you sit still? What will go wrong? She said, I can't bear it. It's unbearable. What is unbearable, you see? We are afraid. Who are we without our minds being engaged? That is how identified we are with mental activity. Now, the example which you gave, I remember at Rameshji's satsangs, one lady had come. She was a fashion model in her younger days. Now she was about 60 years old.
Yes.
And she told Rameshji, she said, I used to be the center of attention. The world used to look at me. Even people who didn't know me, when I would cross the road, eyes would be turning. And now that I am old, nobody recognizes me. I am not married. I am alone. Nobody gives me attention. And my teacher told her, that if it is making you depressed, which it was, that's why she had come, he said, firstly, an idle mind is a devil's workshop. If your career is finished, if you are not doing anything, then your mind is going into this dead past where you were noticed by everyone. So first thing is, take care of that. If you are lonely, find out others who are lonely and spend time with them. So she objected, you see. She said, where will I find people who are lonely? I'm not going to look around. He said, look, it's very simple, but I hope you're listening to me. For example, go to an orphanage where the kids don't have parents, take gifts for them, you have earned a lot of money, and spend time with them. So your working mind is engaged, something productive is happening, and at least you would have taken one step, which is from this obsession with who I was in the past, which is the thinking mind lost in this past, the dead past. That will come to an end. That is the first step. So you see, that step needs to be taken. And then to understand that one cannot be also engaged in the working mind all the time. Many of us are lost in our minds. You see, it reminds me of another incident. When I was perhaps, this was in the year 1999, 29 years old at that time. I was in Hong Kong, and Eckhart Tolle, who at that time was not really known as such, had come to give a talk there. Now, I had gone on holiday to Hong Kong, and a friend of mine who was in the police force was with me. So my sister was talking to us at the dinner table and telling him that why don't you come the next morning for Eckhart's private talk, which he's giving at my friend's house. So this friend who was a police officer asked my sister, what does he talk about? So she said, he talks about being in the present moment. So the police officer replied, I don't need to listen to such a talk, because when I am facing a gangster, I'm always in the present moment. Where else will I be? If I'm not in the present, I'll be dead. I don't need to go to a talk of someone who's telling me be in the present moment. It's not for me. Now, he is right only on one level, that it is only at his work that he is in the present moment. What happens to the rest of your day when you are not facing a gangster? You see, this is a very important point. It is like this boy who would come to me. He said, beautiful concept. It has given me so much clarity and so much peace that I ensure I'm not in the thinking mind. Earlier, I was lost in the thinking mind, and your teachings have shown me now the burden of the thinking mind. Now I am in working mind mode all the time. I said, how are you in working mind mode all the time? Are you involved in a job morning to night? He said, no. I keep myself busy playing video games morning to night. You see? Now, isn't that exhausting? What is behind this? We are afraid of the mind being still and quiet.
Yes.
This is what the wisdom teachings point to. You don't have to be active all the time. You don't have to be engaged all the time. You don't have to be identified all the time. Just sit and be still and witness the thoughts arising. Witness the events in your own life. This is the journey to self-realization. And all wisdom teachings, including Sai Baba's teachings, if you listen to Sai Baba's teachings, they point to this. They are always coming down to this. What Baba's teachings are doing, they are stilling the mind. You see, when he says that I am in everyone, I am in the dog, and so on, he's trying to show you the unity and connectedness of the divine force operating through everyone. Now, if you accept that and you live that teaching, your mind will be stilled. It's as simple as that. How will it be still? You won't blame and condemn people. You won't hate yourself. You won't hate others. And when all these qualities drop away, you are left with a still mind. The still mind, which is a mind at peace. many of us don't really follow these teachings. You see, we think we do, we think we are living these teachings, but actually we aren't, because the measure of living is the degree of peace and true happiness we feel within. Now that is very important, and it takes courage to really say that no, deep down I am not at peace. We tend to fool ourselves.
So, Gautam, if we could look at this visually, it would be a journey from the thinking mind to the working mind, and then in parallel or ultimately to transcending the mind, if not completely, at least as much as possible. That means being equanimous, peaceful, feeling that joy within, and not necessarily having to be engaged in constant activity internally or externally all the time.
Yes, now having said that, the main thing here is the thinking mind, which is the troublemaker, because that is what keeps us identified with our story and the blame game of life. He did this to me, she did that to me, God did this to me. That is all the garbage of the thinking mind. The first step is that goes out of the window, that dialogue is finished, which automatically results in peace and equanimity and calmness. Now what happens, that when there is a need for the working mind to be engaged, it is engaged.
Yes.
Not as an escape from the present moment, you see. Now that escape from the present moment is over. When the working mind is meant to be engaged, it's like a meditation because we are fully focused. And when the working mind is not engaged, we are happy either to go for a walk by the beach, in the park, or sit at home, just look out of the window. There's no struggle and anxiety which we are feeling within, that my God, I can't be still. That struggle is over.
Yes, and then Gautam, there are typical escape routes as well. If it's not the thinking mind, typically the ego would engage either in, just engaging in meaningless conversations with people, drinking, all sorts of these other activities that, as Eckhart put a good thing, he said, your idea is to actually go above the level of thinking, and these sort of things submerge you below, so it actually takes you into a vegetative state. Then to avoid the thinking mind altogether, then people, I guess not people, but the ego would try and engage in these activities, so it's almost numbing them in one way.
Yes, because all these are need based, like being very social, for example, is fun to a point, but we become dependent on it. You see, because we wear masks, we derive our sense of identity from what others think of us. And all these subtle games are played by the ego. So again, that is the mind which is in operation.
Gautam, if it's possible, on another podcast episode where we talk of the typical tendencies of the ego. So, if one, say, becomes aware of these things, like just name dropping as an example, or escape routes, like just typical patterns, it might be too much to cover now in this
Yes.
particular podcast, but would you be happy to talk about that?
Sure. We'll just, since you mentioned name dropping, let's just see how it operates. I know so and so. I know this Bollywood star. Or I've taken a photo with him or her, right? What happens is, we feel by knowing the Bollywood star and telling people, our sense of worth is now higher in their eyes. So we have derived our sense of worth from an identification with the Bollywood star, an identification with something external. Wow, this is who I am. I know a Bollywood star. Look at me. You see, that look at me is the ego seeking attention. The sage, if a Bollywood star is in front of him, or the ordinary person is in front of him, there is no distinction. And now I will tell you from personal experience a couple of things in Rameshji's satsangs, which I have seen with my own eyes. Two instances. One was a world famous singer called Leonard Cohen. Anyone can Google him, he is no more now. Leonard Cohen used to come. And he himself was a very humble man. You would not recognize any greatness in this man. He was so simply dressed. And he would come and he would be like all of us, go up together, sit quietly. And he did not get any special treatment from Rameshji during the satsang. Maybe after the satsang, Rameshji would, say something about him. Have you heard Leonard's music? It is so deep and meaningful. That is all. But everyone in that room was treated equally. There was another Hollywood star at that time called Dennis Quaid who had come. He used to come every now and then. I was there one Sunday when he came. But he was on the floor like everyone else. Why? The sage does not derive his sense of self from this identification, you see. It does not mean that pleasure does not arise. Of course, pleasure arose. If, let's say, someone told Rameshji that, do you know so-and-so is coming? He would say, oh, I look forward to it. But there is no sense of self derived from that. What we tend to do is, we build our identities about ourselves from the people who are recognized in society, big names in society, and that is how this name-dropping game starts.
And Gautam, in Baba's community as well, one thing I feel devotees have to be very particularly aware of, which maybe we can discuss in detail in the next podcast, is the tendency to get stuck in experiences and identify with them. Because, if someone says, I have experienced ABC, then within them, they've already just waiting for that person to finish so they can say, I've experienced, oh, you had this, so I had this too,
It's the same thing, that feeling of being special.
Correct. That is a very dangerous one.
It is, absolutely. It's a pitfall. You see, it's the biggest pitfall for the ego.
Yeah. Once we had gone from Rishikesh to Kashi, we had gone with one Swamiji, and he had to attend one discourse there. And I remember it was one of the masters on stage said, in the spiritual tradition, amidst, the sadhu community, the minute somebody starts talking of their experiences, it's like blowing their own trumpet and we know this is their downfall. And internally I was laughing because it's as they say, it's easier to see it in someone else than within yourself.
So true, yeah.
So Gautam, then to sum up this very important thing you've shared with us, it could be first priority, as Rameshji said, take a few steps to get out of the thinking mind into the working mind in a healthy and balanced way. So maybe a job, maybe some volunteering, maybe some seva or whatever it is. But keeping in mind at all times that does not become a substitute for your spiritual practice,
Yes.
your awareness, whatever it may be. It may, as Baba devotees, maybe it is your sadhana, or maybe if it's someone who's following Eckhart Tolle, stillness. In principle, it's always the same thing. But whatever your practice is, because otherwise I think everyone, having these crazy work days and
Yes.
being over engaged in their work shouldn't then abuse this saying, hey, I'm always in the working mind, like the police inspector example. So Gautam, thank you. These examples have made it a lot simpler to understand this thing, and I hope devotees who hear this can take a lot from it, because it's certainly, I would say, one of those foundational principles one can keep their awareness around at all times.
Yes, and Nick, especially at this time with the lockdown being on for so long, it is the thinking mind which is very actively engaged, more so because the future is uncertain. So it is actually the right time to practice the teachings, because the mind goes all over the place and can create very fearful scenarios, imaginary scenarios, many possibilities of what could happen to me. So it is the time that if you feel your thinking mind is overworking, take a switch to the working mind if possible, and if not possible, witness how the thinking mind operates, because it will reveal to you a lot. It will reveal to you your identifications with the thinking mind. That itself, after all, is the journey within.
Wonderful, Gautam. Thank you as always.
My pleasure, Nick.
Thank you. And we look forward to this important next podcast with you.
Yes, all the best.
I do something naughty each time. Now, midway, I get a commitment for you for the next podcast. On air, you've said yes, yes, I'll do it. So great. Thank you, Gautam.
Okay, Nick, all the best. Take care.
All right. Namaste. Yeah, take care. Bye bye.